All right, welcome to section 4.3, multiplying matrices. So again, our big ideas for this chapter. Why would a matrix be used to solve systems of equations, and how are matrices used to solve everyday applications? We'll get into number 2 especially tomorrow when we talk about our applications. Again, be thinking about number 1, why you would use those. So our learning target, I can get to the next slide, is just multiplying matrices. That's what we are trying to do today. So our multiplication rule. Our first rule is that we can multiply matrices if and only if columns in matrix A equals rows. Let's erase that. Equals rows in matrix B. So we can only multiply matrices if and only if columns in matrix A equals the rows in matrix B. So an example with that is if we have A, which is a 3 by 2, and B, which is a 2 by 4, and we multiply these two together, this would equal AB. Because these two are equal, AB would be a 3 by 4. All right, so the first order of business is we are going to determine whether each set of matrices could be multiplied. If so, state the product. All right, so let's look at matrix A is a 3 by 4, B is a 4 by 2. Well, if we look, 4 and 4 are equal. So because those are equal, we can multiply, and this would be a 3 by 2. So this would be a 3 by 2. Let's look at here. We have 3 and we have 5. So these are not equal. And because they are not equal, no, we cannot multiply them. This one would be yes. We get a 3 by 2. If we look at number 3, we have a 2 by 3. Again, these are not equal, so can we multiply them? No. If we go to number 4, 6 and 6, so these are equal, so it would be a 4 by 2, and yes, when we multiply them, it would be a 4 by 2. So again, these two numbers need to be the same when you are multiplying. So now we know whether or not we can multiply matrices. Let's look at how we would multiply matrices. So when we multiply matrices, this is going to be columns by rows. You can also do it in your graphing calculator, which we will show you at a later date. But you're multiplying columns by rows because we are doing them by hand today. So let's look at our first example. We are going to find f of x. So to start, we know x is a 2 by 2. And y is a 2 by 2. We have to see if these are equal, which they are. So xy is going to give us a 2 by 2 when we multiply these matrices. Because these are equal, take the two outside ones, so we know our matrices should be a 2 by 2. So now, it's just a matter of multiplying. So we know we're going to have our 2 by 2, so we're going to start with our draw our matrices and draw our brackets. So again, we are multiplying columns by rows. So to get this first space, we are going to take 6 times 3, our first column, and we're going to multiply it times our first row, which is negative 5, 3. So we'd have 6 from here times negative 5 plus negative 3 times 3. So that's where our first column went, from 6 times negative 5, negative 3 times 3. So next we're going to do this the bottom left-hand side. So we would take negative 10 and negative 2, because that's our bottom, and we're going to multiply it times negative 5 times 3. So I'd have negative 10 times negative 5. So negative 10 times negative 5 plus negative 2 times 3. Okay, so now I would find my third column. So I'm going to erase this so you guys can see where these numbers are coming from. I'm going to take my, again, top row, which is 6 times negative 3, and now I'm going to multiply it times my right column, which is negative 4 and 3. So I'd have 6 times negative 4 plus negative 3 times 3. And lastly, I'm going to we're going to go in purple. So the bottom, negative 10 times negative 2. I'm going to erase this. And again, so because I'm looking for this bottom area, I'm looking for this bottom area down here. I'm going to take negative 10 times negative 2, multiply it negative 4 times negative 3. So I'd have negative 10 times negative 4 plus negative 2 times 3. So again, setting up the problem is probably going to be the hardest. So from here, it is just so the first thing we need to do is we need to figure out if this is possible to multiply. So y is a 2 by 2. X is also a 2 by 2. So because these two numbers are equal, so since those two numbers are equal, we know we can multiply. So we're going to take the first and the last. So again, yes, if we multiply these, it is going to be a 2 by 2. So now it's a matter of multiplying them. And I'll bring everything down so we can see a little better. So again, everything's down here nice and neat for you guys to look at. So again, we're going y times x. So I'm going to draw my brackets nice and big. So this top left-hand corner, you're going to take, again, the top of y and the left of x. So it'd be negative 5 times 6 plus negative 4 times negative 10. Now we're going to do the bottom left. So I take the bottom of y and the left of x. So I'd have 3 times 6 plus 3 times 10, negative 10. 3 times negative 10. So now I'm doing this top right. So I would take the top of y and the right of x. So negative 5 times negative 3 plus negative 4 times negative 2. And finally, because I'm doing the bottom right, I'm going to take the bottom of y and the right of x. So it'd be 3 times negative 3 plus 3 times negative 2. We are going to quickly extend the page. Scroll up a little bit. So now all we're doing is we're going to do basic multiplication and addition. So I would take negative 5 times negative 6. So I'd have negative 30. Negative 4 times negative 10 would be plus 40. In green, negative 5 times negative 3 would be 15. Negative 4 times negative 2 would be 8. In blue, I would have 3 times 6, which is 18, minus 3 times negative 10 is 30. And finally, in purple, I would have negative 9, minus 6. I would have negative 9 minus 6. Now, lastly, I need to add or subtract these numbers together to get my answer. So negative 30 plus 40 would give me 10. 15 and 8 would give me 23. Negative 9 and negative 6 would give me negative 15. And 18 minus 30 would give me negative 12. And this would be my final answer. So let's move on to the next example. We want to find S of t if S is that matrix and T is the matrix by going. Also shown. So we know S is a 2 by 3. I know T is a 2 by 2. Well, if I look at 3 and 2 are not equal, so this is not possible because I cannot multiply those together. And finally, our last example. So we know C is a 1 by 2. We know D is a 2 by 2. So 2 and 2 are equal. So we know this works. So we know our matrix, C times D, would be those numbers circled in purple. So it would be a 1 by 2. So it's possible. It's going to be a 1 by 2. So let's calculate this and see what we get. So because it's a 1 by 2, I'm going to take the one row of C times the start. Again, it's down 1 over 2 to the left of D. So I'm going to have 9 times negative 2 plus negative 2 times 6. And for my bottom, I'm going to have the one row of C times the right row of D. So I'm going to need to make these brackets a little bit bigger. So I'm going to find my eraser. Again, it's a 1 by 2. So I'm taking this by this. So it'd be 9 times 4 plus negative 2 times negative 7. So now it is just calculating those out. Again, we have a 1 by 2. 9 times negative 2 is negative 18. Not very good. So let's go back. So I would have negative 18 minus 12. In purple, I would have 36 plus 14. So 36 plus 14. And finally, when I calculate this out, I would have a negative 30. Remove that, maybe, who knows. I would have a negative 30. And in purple, I would have a 50. So again, this would be my final answer. Your homework should be 4.3 worksheets, so you can grab that and get started. And that is it for your lesson on multiplying matrices.